I always carried the scent of my mother's hand-washed school uniform soap. Eloan, the scheming girl, pinched her nose and sneered. It reeks of poverty. My childhood friend Soren frowned and pushed me away. It's awful. Stay away from me. They didn't understand. This was my mother's scent. I blinked back tears and silently protested in my heart. I moved to a new seat, sitting next to Kale, the school's infamous bully. Later, during Kale leaned down and softly sniffed my hair. But Soren caught us. He threw his basketball aside and stormed over, his eyes red with anger, shouting, "Citrus! How dare you let him touch you?" Citrus stood at the door of the classroom, taking a deep breath as she tugged at her faded school uniform. Her mother had washed it again last night with that old bar of soap, and now the familiar, faint soap scent surrounded her. She knew Soren hated it. "Citrus! Why are you just standing there? Come in," a classmate behind her urged. She nodded and quickly made her way to her seat, the one by the window in the third row, right next to Soren. They had been desk mates since elementary school, through middle school, and now high school. Everyone said they were a perfect match. And even the teachers assumed they should always sit together. "Good morning," Citrus whispered as she greeted Soren, carefully placing her bag down. Soren was solving some problems and didn't look up, only furrowing his brow slightly. When Citrus sat down, the faint scent of soap inevitably wafted toward him. He suddenly leaned back in his chair with a loud squeak. "How many times do I have to tell you? This smell is awful," Soren said, frowning, waving his hand in front of his nose. "Can't you get your mom to buy some laundry detergent instead?" The classroom fell silent for a moment, and several students shot looks of sympathy or mockery at her. Citrus felt her ears burn. She bit her lip and pulled her bag closer, trying to distance herself from Soren. I think it's okay," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "That's because you're used to it," Soren replied impatiently, flipping open his textbook. "Next time. Sit farther away." Citrus felt her eyes water, but she just nodded, shifting closer to the window. The sunlight streamed in, and she pretended it had hurt her eyes, quickly wiping at the corner of her eye. Just then, there was a stir at the door. A girl in a brand new uniform stood there, her long hair flowing like a river, her features delicate like a doll. "Wow. It's Eloan," a boy whispered. "She really transferred to our class?" Eloan, the principal's daughter, was the campus beauty who had just transferred from an international school. She scanned the room, her gaze lingering on Soren for a few seconds before she lifted her chin and walked straight over. "I'll take this seat," she said, pointing to Citrus's spot, her tone leaving no room for argument. Citrus froze, looking helplessly at Soren. He glanced at Eloan for a moment, said nothing, and simply shifted aside to give her more space. I'll. Citrus's voice quivered. "Find another seat," Soren said without looking up, his tone as neutral as if discussing the weather. Eloan smiled triumphantly, and the expensive scent of her perfume instantly overpowered the faint smell of soap on Citrus. Flustered, Citrus scrambled to gather her books, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. As she stood with her bag, she heard Eloan whisper to Soren, "Finally, no more of that poor, musty smell, right?" Soren didn't answer, but he didn't refute it either. Citrus lowered her head and hurried to the back row, her eyes burned with unshed tears. The classroom was almost full, and the only empty seat left was the one by the window in the last row next to Kale, the school bully. Kale, infamous for his fighting skills, was said to have gotten the scar by taking on 5 people outside of school. He always sat alone in the last row, and no one dared to come within 3 meters of him. Right now, he was slumped over his desk, sleeping, his black hair messy and sticking up, revealing his sharp profile. Citrus hesitated in the aisle. Just then, the homeroom teacher, Kira, walked in, noticed the situation, and frowned. "Citrus, why are you standing there? Go back to your seat." "Teacher." Kira followed her gaze and sighed. "You can sit next to Kale for now. We'll rearrange next week." The class fell silent, everyone eager to see how Kale would react when he woke up. Citrus took a deep breath and tiptoed to the empty seat, trying not to disturb Kale. Just as she placed her bag down, Kale suddenly stirred and lifted his head. He looked at her through half-lidded eyes, and his fierce gaze made her freeze in place. This is it, she thought. I'm dead. But the next moment, Kale's actions left everyone stunned. He tilted his head slightly, his nostrils flaring as if sniffing something. Then, let out a low sigh. A glimmer of surprise flashed in his usually cold eyes. Soap? Kale murmured, his voice raspy from just waking up. You smell like soap? Citrus nervously nodded, ready to apologize. But what happened next stunned everyone even more. Kale closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled faintly. It smells nice, he said, before going back to sleep, leaving only the back of his fluffy head for Citrus to see. The class was deathly silent. Citrus sat frozen in her seat, her face slowly turning red. In the front row, Soren turned his head in disbelief, his brows furrowed. Eloan, on the other hand, sneered and turned away. Citrus quietly touched the sleeve of her school uniform, where traces of her mother's hand-washing and a soap scent lingered. For the first time, someone had told her that the smell was nice. When the bell for class dismissal rang, Citrus finally relaxed her tense body a little. Throughout the entire class, she had been sitting stiffly in her seat, terrified of accidentally touching Kale, who was fast asleep beside her. Now, she needed to figure out how to get up from her seat without waking him. She carefully pushed her chair back and had just stood up when Kale suddenly lifted his head and looked at her with sleepy eyes. Sorry. I woke you up, Citrus stammered, her fingers unconsciously twisting together. Kale rubbed his eyes, and the scar that stretched across his left eyebrow ridge twisted slightly with the movement. He didn't say a word. He just stared at her, his gaze shifting from the tips of her reddened ears to her fingers, which were trembling with nervousness. Are you afraid of me? He suddenly asked in a deep voice. Citrus swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. Who in the entire school wasn't afraid of Kale? There were rumors that he had taken down 5 off-campus hooligans by himself, and even the teachers didn't dare to discipline him. She was just about to speak when a commotion suddenly broke out at the front door of the classroom. Aesop walked over with a few other boys, a malicious smile on his face. Hey, Citrus. Got dumped by Soren? He deliberately raised his voice. How about coming to sit with me? Though that shabby smell on you is pretty disgusting. A few snickers broke out in the classroom. Citrus felt her cheeks burning intensely. She lowered her head, wishing she could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Get lost. A cold voice suddenly cut through the air. Kale had stood up at some point, his tall figure shielding Citrus from view. He stared at Aesop with a menacing look, his right hand clenched into a fist, the knuckles making a faint clicking sound. Aesop's face changed, and he took 2 steps back. Kale. I wasn't even messing with you. I said. Leave. Kale said, each word slow and deliberate, his voice low but full of authority. Aesop and his lackeys scattered immediately. Citrus stared at Kale's retreating figure, surprised that the feared school bully had stood up for her. Kale turned back, the fierceness fading from his face, replaced by a slight awkwardness. Ignore them, he muttered, bending down to pull a crumpled workbook out of his desk. Your math homework got torn, right? Use mine. Citrus froze. She had indeed been cornered by a few girls in the bathroom yesterday. Her homework shredded to pieces. But she had never told anyone. How do you know? She started. But Kale looked away, his ears faintly reddening. I saw it, he said, thrusting the workbook into her hands. Hurry up and copy it. The next class is about to start. Citrus flipped open the workbook and was stunned to find neat handwriting, with detailed steps for each problem, nothing like the notorious troublemaker who skipped class and fought on the streets. Even more surprising was that every single answer was correct, something even Soren occasionally got wrong. Your homework. It's all correct. She couldn't help but say. Kale shrugged, not offering an explanation. He returned to his seat, slouching forward, but this time, facing her. Citrus sneaked a glance at him and realized he wasn't sleeping. His eyes were open, watching her as she copied the answers. You're doing it wrong. He suddenly reached over and pointed at a step she'd written. You should use the law of cosines here. Not the Pythagorean theorem. Citrus blinked. Surprised. You know the law of cosines? Cale furrowed his brows, seeming displeased by her surprise. Do I look like an idiot? No. No, Citrus quickly shook her head, but didn't dare say more. Cale understood her implication. Just didn't expect the school bully to be good at studying? He muttered with a self-deprecating smile. Copy my homework. Citrus. This was the first time he had called her by name. Not hey, or you. A warmth spread through Citrus's chest, and she lowered her head to continue copying. She didn't notice Soren in the front row, turning back frequently. His gaze filled with complex emotions as he watched them. During the afternoon class meeting, the homeroom teacher announced the upcoming math competition next month. 2 people per team, with voluntary sign-ups. Kira pushed up his glasses. Soren and Eloan. Will you team up? Soren stood and nodded slightly. Yes, heading to cell-wide session. Teacher. Laughter erupted in the classroom. Eloan flipped her hair proudly and raised her voice deliberately. Soren says I'm good at math. We'll definitely win first place. Citrus lowered her head, a pang of bitterness rising in her chest. In the past, she and Soren had always been the team for such competitions. From elementary school through middle school, they were always partners. Soren often said she was the only one who could keep up with his thinking. Want to join? Cale's voice brought her back to reality. Citrus smiled wryly and shook her head. My math isn't good enough. You scored 92 on the last quiz. Cale pointed out. That's not bad. Citrus stared at him in surprise. How do you know my score? Cale turned his gaze away. His tone stiff. The score sheet is on the wall. Anyone can see it. Citrus was about to say something when Eloan suddenly spoke loudly from the front row. Teacher, have I think there should be a minimum standard for this competition. Or else any Tom, Dick, and Harry will sign up and lower the level. She glanced meaningfully towards the back row. Some people can't even afford laundry detergent. They should just stay out of it and not embarrass themselves. A few girls laughed in agreement. Soren frowned but said nothing. Citrus bit her lower lip, her eyes stinging. At that moment, Cale suddenly stood up. Teacher. I'm signing up with Citrus. The class immediately went silent. Everyone turned to look at them, including a shocked Soren. Kira adjusted his glasses. Cale. Are you sure? This competition is quite serious. I'm sure. Cale said calmly. Citrus is good at math. I'm confident we can do well. Citrus looked up at his determined profile. Her heart racing. She had never seen this side of Cale confident, resolute. Completely different from the solitary troublemaker he usually was. Eloan sneered. The school bully and the poor girl, what a match. She waved her hand in front of her nose. At least they're both stinky, one smells like sweat. The other like soap. Cale turned his head, coldly glaring at Eloan. At least soap is clean. Your perfume is too strong. It smells like you spilled a whole bottle of cheap fragrance. Maybe you should use less, it's bothering the rest of us. The classroom erupted in laughter. Eloan's face turned betrayed, and Soren looked at Cale, surprised. As though he was finally noticing the boy who always sat in the back. Citrus quietly tugged at Cale's sleeve, whispering, Thank you. Cale sat back down, his expression returning to its usual indifference. But Citrus noticed the tips of his ears turning red. No need to thank me, he muttered. I was just telling the truth. After the class meeting, Soren stopped Citrus as she was about to leave. Citrus. He frowned. Are you really teaming up with Cale? You know what kind of person he is, right? Citrus hugged her books tightly and gathered her courage to meet Soren's gaze. I'm not sure what kind of person he is. But I know he spoke up for me just now. And you. She didn't finish. But her meaning was clear. Soren's expression grew more complicated. I just think. Think what? Cale's voice came from behind. He had somehow gotten to her side without her noticing, holding to practice books in his hands. Do you think she's not worthy of teaming up with you? Or do you think she smells too bad? Soren stood up straighter. Though he was a head shorter than Cale, his presence was no less imposing. This is between Citrus and me. It's between me and her now, Kale said, handing one of the practice books to Citrus. I've compiled the competition topics from the past 5 years. We'll start special training tonight. Citrus took the workbook, surprised to see it filled with dense handwritten notes. The writing neat and beautiful. She looked up at Kale, who avoided her gaze, seemingly embarrassed to admit he had put so much effort into it. Soren watched their interaction, his frown deepening. Citrus, he said suddenly, if you really want to compete, I can talk to Owen and get you into our team. Citrus shook her head, clutching the workbook Kale had given her. No need. I already have a partner. She turned and walked away with Kale, leaving Soren standing there, his expression shifting between frustration and confusion. He hadn't noticed that across the classroom, Owen was watching them coldly, a dangerous glint in her eyes. On Saturday morning, Citrus stood nervously at the edge of the school field, anxiously tugging at the hem of her tracksuit. The upcoming 800-meter run test was nothing short of a nightmare for her, given her poor stamina. Citrus, Soren's voice called from behind her. He was in a fitted tracksuit, a thin layer of sweat already foaming on his forehead, clearly having just finished a basketball game. When the test starts, stay behind me and follow my pace. I'll lead you through it. Citrus looked at him, surprised. Ever since she changed seats, Soren hadn't spoken to her for 2 weeks. No need. A low voice interrupted her. Kale appeared beside her out of nowhere, holding 2 bottles of water. She's with me for this one. Soren narrowed his eyes. Groupings are by student number. Kale, you're number 28. She's 29. And I'm 7. So what? Kale replied, handing 1 bottle to Citrus. I already spoke to the teacher. We'll run separately. Citrus took the water, whispering. Why? Kale shrugged. You have a low lung capacity. Running with the group would only slow you down. Running alone lets you control your own pace. Soren scoffed. You really know her well. Kale ignored the mockery, instead turning to Citrus. Did you warm up? Citrus shook her head, and Kale sighed. I knew it. Come here. I'll show you a few stretches, or you'll be sore after the run. Soren stood still, watching Kale guide Citrus through the stretches, his expression growing darker. Finally, Henningsel felt red sigh. He coldly said, whatever. He turned and walked away. Citrus watched Soren's retreating figure, feeling a sense of discomfort in her chest. Kale noticed her gaze and paused for a moment. Regret it? He asked. You could still go after him. No. Citrus quickly shook her head. I'm just not used to it. He used to always be the one to help me run. Kale fell silent for a while, then suddenly asked, how long have you known him? Since kindergarten. Citrus smiled softly. Our families lived across from each other. When we were little, he always came over to my house for meals. He used to say my mom made the best braised pork. Kale's gaze darkened. Oh. Citrus realized she may have said something wrong and hurried to add, but he doesn't come over anymore. Ever since his dad got promoted and they moved to the city center. She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. The gap between their families had grown too wide. Ready? The gym teacher blew the whistle. Girls group, get ready. Citrus stepped nervously onto the track. The other girls crowded in the inner lane, and only she was in the outer lane, with Kale standing by the sidelines, watching her. The whistle blew, and the girls shot off like arrows. Citrus pushed herself to keep up, but she quickly fell behind. By the second lap, she was gasping for breath, her legs feeling as if they were made of lead. Don't rush. Kale's voice came from the grass beside her. His steps light as he matched her pace. He breathed evenly. 2 steps in, 2 steps out. Citrus adjusted her breathing to match his. And she did feel a little easier. Swing your arms more. That's it. Kale's voice was surprisingly patient. The last 100 meters. Start to pick up the pace. When Citrus finally crossed the finish line, her legs gave way, and she nearly collapsed. Kale caught her, gently patting her back to help her catch her breath. 4 minutes. 12 seconds. The gym teacher exclaimed. That's 20 seconds faster than last time. Citrus. Really? Citrus looked up at Kale in surprise. And he gave her a small smile. Not bad, he said briefly. But the approval in his eyes made Citrus's heart warm. After the test, Citrus sat under the shade of a tree, resting while Kale went to get her some water. Soren walked over and sat down beside her. You ran pretty well, he said, his tone dry. Citrus was a little taken aback. Thanks. Soren was silent for a while before suddenly asking. You and Kale? You too. Is he interested in you? Citrus's face flushed. What? No, it's not like that. He's just. She couldn't quite explain why Kale was being so nice to her. Soren stared at Kale, who was walking toward them. His voice lowered. Citrus. You don't understand him. I heard that back in middle school. He put someone in the hospital. And what? Kale had reached them. His voice cold. Soren stood up, locking eyes with Kale. Citrus is my friend. I don't want her to get hurt. Kale's gaze turned dangerous. Then where were you? He pointed toward where Elowen was standing. When she was mocking Citrus. Where were you? When she spread rumors about Citrus not being hygienic. What did you do? Soren's face darkened. That was just a small conflict between girls. Huh. Kale scoffed. You play the double standard so well. Honor student. Citrus quickly stood up to intervene. Stop it. She suddenly noticed a bloodstain on the back of Kale's right hand. What happened to your hand? Kale quickly hid his hand behind his back. Nothing. Let me see. Citrus insisted, pulling his hand toward her. She saw a fresh wound on the back of his hand, as if something sharp had scratched him. This needs to be treated. The infirmary should still be open. Kale tried to pull his hand away. It's not a big deal. Let's go. Citrus insisted. Then looked up at Soren. We're leaving now. She pulled Kale away, not noticing the complex look in Soren's eyes behind them. On the way to the infirmary, Kale suddenly asked. Why? Why what? Why help me? Kale's voice was rough. Everyone else sees me injured and just assumes I've been fighting again. Citrus thought for a moment before answering honestly. Because you've helped me. And she gathered her courage. I don't think you're as scary as people say. Kale stopped walking, turning to look at her seriously. That's because you've never seen the scary side of me. Citrus looked up at him, the sunlight filtering through the leaves and casting dappled shadows on his face, softening the scar near his eye. Everyone has many sides to them. She spoke softly. You just don't show the gentle side to others. Kale stood frozen for a moment, as if he had never considered that someone would think of him like that. He opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the call of the infirmary teacher. Kale. You again. Got into another fight? Citrus quickly explained. No. Teacher. He was injured while helping me train. The school nurse was skeptical but cleaned and bandaged Kale's wound. Afterward, Citrus noticed that his expression had softened considerably. Thanks. He muttered quietly. Citrus smiled. No problem. By the way, when do we start our competition training tomorrow? Kale thought for a moment. 2 p.m. In the library? Okay. Citrus nodded, then suddenly had an idea. By the way, what do you like to eat? My mom asked me to invite you over for dinner. As a way to thank you for tutoring me in math. Kale seemed taken aback, his ears turning visibly red. Anything is fine. He stammered. Great. It's settled then. Citrus said happily. Next Sunday at noon. Remember to come. As she turned to leave, Citrus glanced back at Kale, still standing in place. The sunlight bathed him, softening his imposing figure, making him look nothing like the fearsome school bully everyone talked about. She suddenly realized she had discovered something about Kale that no one knew beneath that tough exterior. There was a heart softer than anyone else's. Monday morning. Citrus rushed into the classroom, beads of sweat still on her forehead. She had stayed up late taking care of her feverish mother, and had barely made it to the pharmacy this morning before school. Almost arriving late. Late again? Elowen's voice rose deliberately. Some people think that just because they have someone backing them, they can ignore the rules. Citrus kept her head down and walked briskly to her seat, ignoring her. Since teaming up with Kale for the math competition, Aloan's harassment had gotten worse. But she had learned not to care anymore. Kale was already seated and frowned when he saw her out of breath. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Citrus forced a smile and dropped her bag onto the desk. She hadn't slept much last night, and her head felt as heavy as if it were filled with lead. The first class was math, and the teacher announced a surprise quiz. Citrus tried to push through, but the numbers and symbols on the paper blurred into a haze. She blinked hard, trying to focus, but her head kept growing heavier. "Citrus." Kale's voice seemed to come from far away. She felt someone steady her tilting body. And then everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself lying in the nurse's office, with Kale sitting beside her, his face tense. "You're awake?" His voice carried a hint of concern. "The nurse said it's just exhaustion. You should rest for a bit." Citrus tried to sit up, but Kale gently pushed her back down. "Don't rush. Lie down a bit longer." He handed her a glass of water. "Your mom. She's sick?" Citrus looked at him in surprise. "How do you know?" "I saw the pharmacy bag sticking out of your backpack." Kale explained. "Also, head until Sylvan session. You worked late at the convenience store last night, right? I saw you there." Citrus's face turned red. She did work late at a convenience store to help support her family. But she hadn't expected Kale to have seen her. "My mom has a fever, and she needs someone to take care of her." She spoke softly. "But I have to come to school today. The competition's next week." Kale fell silent for a moment, then said suddenly, "Give me your work schedule." "What?" "Your work schedule," Kale insisted. "I'll cover for you a few days. Until your mom gets better." Citrus was stunned. "No, that would trouble you too much." And what?" Kale raised an eyebrow. "Do you think the school bully can't work at a convenience store?" "No." Citrus quickly denied it. "I just don't want to owe you too many favors." Kale's expression softened. "You don't owe me anything." He paused, then added, "We're friends. Aren't we?" Friends. That word warmed Citrus's heart. She had never imagined that one day she would be friends with Kale, and that this friend would do so much for her. "Thank you," she said sincerely. Kale turned his head uncomfortably. "Stop with the thanks. Just rest." Back in the classroom, Citrus found that her desk had been neatly organized. Even her notes from last week had been filled in. She looked at Kale in confusion, but he pretended to focus on his textbook, though the redness of his ears betrayed him. After school, the homeroom teacher stopped her. "Citrus, it's your turn for duty today." That reminded her that it was her turn to clean the classroom. She was about to agree, but Kale suddenly spoke up. "Teacher, she's not feeling well. I'll cover for her." Kira pushed his glasses up, clearly surprised. "You, Kale? You volunteering for duty is as rare as the sun rising from the west." "Yeah," Kale answered briefly, handing fulfilled Madsa, already starting to gather cleaning supplies. Citrus wanted to refuse, but Kale gave her a look that brooked no argument. "Go home and take care of your mom." As she left the school gate, Citrus ran into Soren. He seemed to be waiting for her. "Citrus, I heard you fainted?" Soren asked with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just needed a little rest." Citrus smiled weakly. Soren hesitated for a moment. "I heard. Your mom is sick? Do you need help?" Citrus shook her head. "No. Kale already." She stopped herself, unsure whether she should mention that Kale was covering for her at the store. Soren's expression grew complicated. "Kale? What else did he do?" "Nothing." Citrus quickly changed the subject. "Did you need something?" Soren seemed like he wanted to say more, but finally just sighed. "The competition's next week. He paused. "Are you sure about teaming up with Kale? His grades are so bad. He'll hold you back." Citrus frowned. "Kale's really good at math. He's been helping me a lot." "Helping you?" Soren scoffed. "Citrus, don't be fooled by him. He's probably copying someone else's work, or having someone do his homework for him. Do you know what his rank was last semester? Near the bottom of the whole grade." "Enough." Citrus suddenly raised her voice, startling even herself. Soren. You don't understand him. Kale. He's much better than you think. Soren stared at her, shocked. He seemed to have never expected the usually gentle Citrus to snap back at him. You've changed. He finally said. Ever since you started hanging out with Kale. You've changed. Citrus didn't deny it. Maybe, she said softly. Maybe it's for the better. She turned and walked away, feeling a strange sense of release, as if she had finally broken free from some kind of restraint. Soren stood there, watching her retreating figure, his expression too complicated to describe. The next morning, Citrus found a small paper bag in her desk. Inside was a box of imported fever medicine and a note, for your mom. As she turned to look at Kale, who was pretending to read his book, but the slight curve of his lips betrayed him. A warmth spread through her chest, even warmer than the sunlight coming through the window. Thank you, she whispered. Kale merely muttered a soft meh, but Citrus noticed that the tips of his ears had turned red again. During lunch break, they went to the library as usual to prepare for the competition. Kale's problem-solving speed was astonishing often. Before Citrus had even finished reading a question, he had already written down the answer. How do you do it? Citrus couldn't help but ask. You're so good at math. But why do you usually underperform in exams? Purposely do poorly? Kale finished her sentence with a shrug. I don't want to draw attention. Why? Kale fell silent for a moment, seemingly deciding whether to answer. Finally, he spoke quietly. My father. He has very high expectations for me. If I perform well, he'll. He suddenly stopped and shook his head. Forget it. Look at this question. There's a simpler way to solve it. Citrus noticed that when Kale mentioned his father, his expression darkened. His fingers unconsciously rubbed a spot on his arm, and she vaguely noticed a scar there. But Kale quickly pulled his sleeve down to cover it. She didn't press him further, but her curiosity about Kale deepened. What secrets was this seemingly tough boy hiding? The day before the competition, they studied in the library until late. When they walked out of the school gates, it was already completely dark. I'll walk you home, Kale said, his tone brooking no refusal. On the way, Citrus gathered the courage to ask a question that had been bothering her for a while. Kale. Why are you so nice to me? Kale's steps faltered. In the moonlight, the lines of his profile seemed particularly sharp. Because of the smell on you, he said quietly. Citrus blinked. Soap? Kale nodded, his voice tinged with nostalgia. My grandmother. She always used soap to wash the clothes. That smell. He trailed off, but Citrus understood. For her, it was the smell of poverty and awkwardness. But for Kale, it was a warm memory. So, you don't mind it? She asked softly. I like it, Kale replied simply, then quickened his pace, as if embarrassed by his sentimental words. Citrus watched his back, and a part of her quietly melted. She suddenly realized that Kale might be the only person in the world who genuinely liked the soap smell on her, while others, including Soren, had always seen it as a symbol of her poverty. The next day, having fulfilled Wansai at the competition venue, Citrus was so nervous that her palms were sweating. Kale stood beside her, his expression calm. Don't be nervous, he whispered. Just treat it like a regular practice. Soren and Loan were sitting not far away, with Loan casting them a disdainful glance. Look. Even the school bully is here for the math competition, she said loudly. Maybe he's here to fight? A few students laughed. Soren frowned but didn't speak up for Citrus. Kale completely ignored the mockery. His attention focused on Citrus. Ready? Citrus took a deep breath and nodded. In that moment, she was incredibly grateful that her partner was Kale, and not anyone else. When the bell signaling the start of the competition rang, she flipped open the test paper and was surprised to find that many of the problems were ones Kale had already helped her practice. She turned to look at him, and he was already writing with great speed. His focus so intense that it seemed like the only thing in the world was him and the math problems. For a moment, Citrus thought that this version of Kale was even more dazzling than ever before. After a deep breath, Citrus gave herself a mental pep talk. These problems were familiar to her. And she began to calm down and answer them. A week later, the results were posted. All the students gathered around the bulletin board. And Citrus, nervous, couldn't bring herself to go up. Let me see. Eloan pushed her way to the front, confidently looking for her and Soren's names. Suddenly, her face changed. This can't be. Soren furrowed his brow and stepped forward, only to freeze as well. Citrus gathered her courage and leaned in to look, her eyes widening in disbelief. First place, Soren. Eloan. Second place, Kale. Citrus. Third place. Second place? Citrus murmured, unable to believe her eyes. Kale stood at the edge of the crowd, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm as though he had expected this result all along. Cheating. They must have cheated. Eloan shrieked. How could Kale possibly score higher than the advanced class students? A few teachers walked over to check the situation. Jasper, the head of the math department, clapped his hands. This competition was absolutely fair. And all the papers underwent strict review. We were particularly surprised by Kale's use of a university-level method for the last problem. The room was in an uproar. Citrus turned to look at Kale. And he quickly averted his gaze, his ears turning slightly red. Impossible. Eloan screamed hysterically. He must have copied. Or maybe Citrus helped him cheat. Who doesn't know they're always together? She suddenly gave a malicious grin. Maybe she's been tutoring him in some special way? The classroom fell silent. A few girls exchanging ambiguous giggles. Citrus felt dizzy. This subtle insinuation hurt more than any direct attack. Eloan. Soren's voice was sharp. Enough. But it was too late. The rumors had already spread like poison throughout the classroom. Kale's expression instantly turned cold. He strode toward Eloan, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. Apologize. Eloan took a step back but quickly straightened her back. Why should I? Who doesn't know that Citrus is trying to suck up to you? I said. Apologize. Kale's voice was low but carried enough weight to make the temperature in the room drop by 10 degrees. Otherwise, I don't mind showing you what the so-called school bully is really like. Eloan's face went pale, and her lips trembled as she struggled to speak. That's enough. The class teacher, Kira, came rushing in. Back to your seats. Kale. No threatening other students. Kale shot one last cold glance at Eloan and turned to walk back to Citrus. Throughout the entire exchange, Soren remained rooted to the spot, his expression complex, and didn't say a word in defense of Citrus. In the following days, the rumors spread even further. As Citrus walked through the school, she could always hear whispers and see knowing smirks behind her. What hurt her the most was that even her former friends began to distance themselves from her. Citrus. During break, her friend Leora pulled her aside in a quiet corner. Did you? With Kale. Did you too? Citrus felt a lump form in her throat. Of course not. We're just friends. Preparing for the competition together. Leora seemed unconvinced. But everyone's saying. Does it matter what everyone says? A deep voice interrupted. Kale appeared behind them, holding two bottles of yogurt. He handed one to Citrus. Strawberry flavor. Just like you like. Leora quickly walked away. Citrus held the cold bottle, her emotions a tangle of confusion and pain. Don't mind them. Kale said quietly. Bored people say bored things. Citrus looked up at him. But this is going to affect your reputation. Kale scoffed. What reputation do I have to affect? He gestured to the scar at the corner of his eye. School bully? Delinquent? I've gotten used to it. Citrus suddenly noticed a brief flash of loneliness in Kale's eyes as he said this. She felt an overwhelming urge to hug him and tell him it wasn't true. But in the end, she just gently touched his arm. Thank you. Kale seemed like he wanted to say something but was interrupted by the sudden ringing of the class bell. After school, Citrus found her locker covered in graffiti, with hurtful words scrawled across it. She silently wiped it away with a wet wipe, her eyes welling with tears. Citrus? Soren's voice came from behind her. He watched as she cleaned off the vulgar words. His brow furrowed. I didn't know things would turn out like this. Citrus didn't turn around. But you didn't stop it. Did you? Soren was silent for a moment. Elowen. Her dad is on the school board. I couldn't. I understand. Citrus interrupted him. You have your reasons. Soren reached out as if to grab her. Citrus. Can we still be friends? Citrus stepped back, avoiding his hand. I don't know. Soren. A real friend wouldn't just stand by when their friend is slandered. She turned and walked away. Tears finally falling. The friendship that she once thought was unbreakable had turned out to be so fragile. Outside the school gate, Citrus saw Kale waiting under the parasol tree by the entrance. The setting sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled light on him and softening his harsh demeanor. Are you okay? He walked toward her, immediately noticing her red-rimmed eyes. His expression darkened. Who's bullying you now? Citrus shook her head. It's just, I'm a little sad. She hesitated. Soren just talked to me. Kale stiffened for a brief moment. Oh. He said we're still friends. But. Citrus smiled bitterly. Friends don't do that. Kale fell silent, walking beside her for a while before suddenly saying, Come with me. He led her to a quiet corner of the school's back garden. There was an abandoned storage room with a small bowl placed outside it. What's this? Kale quietly shushed her and pulled a small packet of cat food from his pocket, pouring it into the bowl. Not long after, a small, skinny orange cat emerged from the bushes, looking at them cautiously before it began to devour the food. You feed cats? Citrus asked in surprise as Kale gently stroked the little cat's back, his movements practiced as if he did this often. Kale's ears turned red. Sometimes. After the cat finished eating, it nuzzled Kale's hand affectionately and purred contentedly. Citrus had never seen this side of Kale, his eyes soft, the faintest smile on his lips. Completely different from the cold, tough school bully he usually appeared to be. Her name is Xiaoju, Kale said softly. I found her here last winter. She almost froze to death. Citrus crouched down and carefully extended her hand. Xiaoju sniffed her fingers but didn't back away. She likes you, Kale said, then added. Cats have sharp senses. They can tell if someone's good or bad. Citrus felt a warmth in her chest. In these days, surrounded by rumors and malice, the acceptance from this little cat felt more comforting than any words of sympathy. On the way home, Kale suddenly pulled out a small, delicate box from his backpack. This is for you. Citrus opened the box to find a beautifully shaped bar of soap, emitting a faint jasmine scent. This is a birthday gift, Kale said awkwardly. Last Friday was your birthday, right? I heard it from Leora. Citrus was stunned. She had indeed had her birthday last Friday. But with her mother being sick and the recent turmoil, she had almost forgotten about it. What surprised her even more was that Kale had remembered. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes welling up again. But why soap? Kale gazed at the setting sun in the distance, his profile softened by the warm light. I told you. I like the smell of you. He paused. But not because I miss my grandmother. That part I made up. Citrus stared at him in surprise. Then. Why? Because. Kale took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Because it's your smell. Clean, pure. Just like you. Citrus's heart skipped a beat, her cheeks flushing. This was the closest Kale had ever come to confessing anything. She was about to respond when Kale's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID, his face immediately becoming serious. I have to take this. He walked to the side and spoke in a low voice for a few moments. When he returned, his face had turned pale. What happened? Citrus asked, concerned. My dad. Kale's voice trembled. He's in the hospital. I need to go. I'll go with you, Citrus said without thinking. Kale shook his head. No. We don't get along well. He forced a smile. See you tomorrow. Citrus watched him hurry off, still holding the soap in her hand. A wave of sadness washed over her. She suddenly realized how little she knew about Kale's family, his past, why he was always so distant, and why he hid his talents. The next day, having fulfilled one session, Kale didn't show up at school. Citrus texted him, but got no reply. During the break, She overheard some girls gossiping. I heard Kale made his dad's blood pressure spike at the hospital yesterday. Is that true? I thought he was just there to visit. Who knows? Anyway, heading way. That kind of person. Citrus clenched her fists. Feeling the first to argue with someone. They didn't know Kale at all. How dare they judge him like that? After school, she decided to visit the hospital. But just as she stepped outside the school gate, Eloan and a few other girls blocked her way. Oh, in a hurry to see your school bully boyfriend? Eloan mocked. Too bad he's too busy to care about you now. Citrus tried to walk around them, but Eloan grabbed her backpack. Citrus, do you really think Kale likes you? Don't dream. He's just pitying you. The poor girl. Citrus pulled away from her grip. Let go. Why the rush? Eloan sneered. I haven't finished talking. Do you know why Kale got so mad at his dad? It's because his dad doesn't want him hanging out with a poor girl. Citrus froze. You're lying. Don't believe me? Eloan proudly shook her phone. My uncle's the director of the hospital. Do you think I don't know anything? Kale's family is important. And his dad has already arranged a marriage for him with someone of the same status. Citrus's heart felt like it had been pierced with a needle. But she forced herself not to show it. That has nothing to do with me. Kale and I are just friends. Friends? Eloan laughed sharply. Everyone knows you too. Know what? A cold voice interrupted. Soren had appeared behind them. His face dark. Eloan. That's enough. Soren didn't answer. But simply pulled Citrus away from the source of the trouble. Once they were in a safer place. Citrus pulled her hand from his grip. Thanks. But I can handle this on my own. Soren's expression was complicated. Citrus. About Kale. What Eloan said might be true. I checked it out. Kale's father is the chairman of the Kale Family Corporation. With a fortune in the billions. Citrus felt like she had been struck by lightning. Kale? Rich heir? How could that be? He wore simpler clothes than she did. And even his stationery was plain and ordinary. I know you don't believe it. Soren said with a bitter smile. I didn't believe it either. But it's the truth. He hid his identity to attend a regular high school. Apparently, having facilely, he had a falling out with his father. Citrus suddenly remembered the scar on Kale's arm. And the dark look in his eyes when he mentioned his father. Maybe, behind those scars, there were stories she couldn't even begin to imagine. Anyway, heading so Silviant Session. She said finally. This doesn't change who he is. Whether poor or rich. Kale is still Kale. Soren looked at her in shock. You, like him? Citrus didn't respond. But the blush on her cheeks gave her away. Soren's expression darkened. I see. At that moment, Citrus's phone rang. It was a text from Kale. Can you come to the hospital? City First Hospital. 8th floor. Room 803. I need you. Citrus's heart tightened. I have to go. Soren watched her hurriedly leave. His fists clenching involuntarily. He didn't tell her that Eloan was plotting something even worse. And this time, Citrus's reputation could suffer irreversible damage. At City First Hospital, on the 8th floor, Citrus nervously stepped out of the elevator. At the end of the hallway, by the door of room 803, Kale was standing against the wall, his face as pale as death. Kale. Citrus jogged over to him. Are you okay? Your father. Kale shook his head and motioned for her to be quiet. He's asleep. I'm exhausted. He rubbed his temples. Thanks for coming. What happened? Citrus asked softly. Kale led her to the resting area around the corner, where no one else was. My dad had a heart attack, he whispered. We had an argument. Citrus noticed his fingers trembling slightly and instinctively took his hand in hers. What was it about? Kale didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he gripped it tightly, as if holding on to a lifeline. Because I rejected his plans for me. He let out a bitter laugh. He wanted me to graduate from high school, go to America, study business, and then come back to take over the family business. But what do you want? I want to study math. Kale's voice was so soft it was barely audible. I want to be a mathematician. Do research. But he thinks that's a waste of time. Citrus's heart jolted. She had never imagined that Kale had such dreams. And never considered that he would be struggling so much between his family's expectations and his own desires. So, you fought? Kale nodded. He said if I don't change my mind, he'll sever our father-son relationship. He paused. Then added, today, after he stabilized. He brought up, you. Citrus's heart skipped a beat. Me? He said he investigated you. Kale's eyes darkened. He knows your family situation and said you're close to me because of money. Citrus felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath her. She jumped to her feet. What? I had no idea about your family. I know. Kale pulled her back down to sit. Of course I know. But my dad. He closed his eyes in pain. He thinks everyone who gets close to the Kale family does so with an ulterior motive. Citrus suddenly understood why Kale always kept to himself. Why he hid his talents and background. In a world full of schemes, he chose to protect his softest parts with a tough exterior. So what are you going to do? She asked. Kale lifted his head. His gaze firm. I won't compromise. Whether it's my education, or, he looked at Citrus. His meaning clear. Other things. Citrus's heart raced. Her cheeks flushed. She wasn't sure if he meant other things to include her. But somewhere deep inside, a flower of hope quietly bloomed. Your father will get better, she whispered, trying to comfort him. When he's calmed down, you two can talk things through. Kale forced a smile. I hope so. He glanced at his watch. It's getting late. Let me take you home. By the time they left the hospital, it was fully dark. Kale insisted on calling a cab and paid the fare in advance. Text me when you get home, he instructed, gently closing the door behind her. Citrus watched him stand under the streetletweed. His tall, solitary figure casting a long shadow. A wave of bittersweet emotion washed over her. It wasn't until this moment that she truly realized she had hopelessly fallen for this tough on the outside, gentle on the inside boy. The next day, Kale still didn't come to school. Citrus sent him a few messages. Receiving only short replies. My dad's condition is still unstable. Needs to be monitored for a few more days. Don't worry. During the break, she was walking alone in the hallway when she overheard some students talking about her name. Citrus stole the class funds? Is it true? It's true. Eloan saw it with her own eyes. Apparently, heading constantly. She's going to expose her in front of everyone today. Citrus felt like she had been struck by ice. Her legs going weak. Stealing class funds? How could that be possible? She turned around quickly to confront Eloan, but bumped into Soren, who was walking towards her in a hurry. Citrus. Soren grabbed her arm, his face serious. Something's happened. He pulled her into an empty classroom and shut the door. Eloan reported to the homeroom teacher that you stole the class funds. She says there's evidence, witnesses, and proof. Citrus trembled. I don't even know anything about class funds. I know it wasn't you, Soren muttered, running a hand through his hair. But Eloan says she saw you going to the class president's bag after school yesterday. And? He hesitated. The class funds are gone. Over 2,000 yuan. I went straight to the hospital to see Kale after school. Citrus nearly burst into tears. He can vouch for me. Soren's expression grew more complicated. The problem is, Kale's not at school right now. And? He lowered his voice. Eloan's dad is on the school board. The teachers will probably believe her more. Citrus felt dizzy. She suddenly understood Eloan's scheme to strike when Kale wasn't around, leaving her without support. Kira wants you to go to the office now, Soren said anxiously. I'll try to help, but... Citrus understood the unspoken meaning. Against the accusations of the school board's daughter, there was little Soren could do. Thanks for telling me, she said, taking a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. The truth will clear itself up. As she walked toward the office, her mind raced. She had to prove where she had been after school yesterday. But with Kale in the hospital, he couldn't come to school right away. The taxi driver might be able to testify, but she couldn't even remember the taxi's license plate number. Citrus pushed open the office door and saw Kira's serious face and Eloan's smug smile. On the desk was a transparent evidence bag. Something clearly inside. Citrus. Kira adjusted her glasses. A classmate reported that you stole the class funds. What do you have to say about that? I didn't steal anything. Citrus's voice trembled but remained firm. After school yesterday, I went straight to the City First Hospital. You can check the surveillance footage. Eloan let out a cold laugh. That's a nice story. Too bad, she pointed to the evidence bag. We found this under your seat. Citrus leaned in and saw that the bag contained a small wallet with the class president's name on it. And it was empty. This isn't mine, she said in panic. I've never seen this wallet before. Then how did it end up under your seat? Eloan pressed, her voice sharp. And it has your fingerprints on it. Citrus felt as though she had been struck by lightning. That's impossible. Kira sighed. Citrus. The fingerprint match is accurate. If you admit it now, the school might consider leniency. But I really didn't. Citrus's tears spilled over. She suddenly realized it was all a carefully set trap. The fingerprints could have been lifted from her regular stationery or other belongings. And the wallet was purposely placed under her seat. Kira, Eloan said, feigning sympathy. Maybe Citrus just made a mistake. After all, she's from a poor family, so it's understandable. Those words shattered Citrus. Her family wasn't well off. But she had never let that make her feel inferior. And she would never resort to theft. This insult hurt her more than any accusation. I want to see yesterday's surveillance footage. She suddenly remembered. If I really searched the class president's bag, the cameras would have caught it. Eloan's face shifted slightly. But she quickly regained her composure. The surveillance cameras were broken yesterday. Such a coincidence. Isn't it? It was too obvious. Everything was too obvious. Citrus's despair grew as she looked around the office. Seeing all the teachers eyeing her with suspicion. Who would believe a poor student over the daughter of a school board member? Just then, Yuadana Sai. The door to the office was slammed open. Kale, panting, stood in the doorway, sweat glistening on his forehead. Clearly having run all the way there. Kale? Kira asked, surprised. Didn't you take the day off? Kale didn't answer. Walking straight to Citrus and gently holding her trembling hand. I'm here. Don't be afraid. The three simple words stabilized Citrus's emotions, which were on the brink of breaking down. Kale turned to the teachers. Citrus went straight to City First Hospital after school yesterday. I can testify to that. You two are in on this together. Your testimony is unreliable. Eloan immediately retorted. Kale gave her a cold glance and pulled out his phone from his pocket. Then watch this. He opened a video, showing clearly that at the time of school's dismissal, Citrus was seen walking briskly out of the school gate. This footage, taken from the school gate's camera, proved that she left the school immediately. Eloan's face changed. That just shows she left the school. It doesn't prove she didn't come back. Here's another one. Kale opened a taxi receipt, showing the route from the school to City First Hospital at 5:23 p.m. yesterday. A driver's contact details were clearly listed on it. Ready for verification. Kira took the phone and examined it carefully, her expression softening. This does confirm where Citrus was yesterday. So what? Eloan screamed, unwilling to give up. The wallet was found under her seat. And the fingerprints are hers. Kale narrowed his eyes. Are you sure? He suddenly turned to Kira. Teacher, I suggest we call the police. Call the police? Eloan's voice rose several octaves. Yes, Kativ Q, Kale said calmly. 2,000 yuan is enough to meet the reporting threshold. The police have professional fingerprint identification technology that can determine when the fingerprints were left and whether there are others. Eloan's face went pale. Citrus suddenly understood if the police were involved, Eloan's frame-up would likely be exposed. And no, that's not necessary. Eloan stammered, her voice trembling. We're all classmates. No need to take it to the police. Kale pressed forward, unrelenting. Why not? If Citrus really is a thief, she should face legal consequences. If she isn't. He shot a meaningful glance at Eloan. The one who framed her deserves to be punished. The atmosphere in the office became tense. The teachers exchanged looks. And it seemed they were starting to question the truth of the situation. I suddenly remember. Eloan's voice grew smaller. Maybe I saw it wrong. Saw what wrong? Kale asked, pressing her. Saw who searched the class president's bag. Eloan's words tumbled out in a chaotic mess. Just then, the class president rushed into the office. Breathless. Kira. The class funds are found. It was in my textbook. I was to care less. A deep silence filled the room. Citrus exhaled in relief. Her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Kale, with steady composure, supported her arm, offering her strength. So, Kira said seriously, looking at Eloan. Everything you claimed seeing it with your own eyes. And the eyewitness testimony was all a lie? Eloan hung her head, not speaking. But her trembling shoulders betrayed her. Eloan. Kira's voice turned stern. Falsely accusing a classmate is a serious matter. I will report this to the principal. And you must apologize to Citrus publicly. Eloan suddenly looked up, hatred filling her eyes. Why should I apologize? Just because she's got Kale's attention? Do you know who Kale is? His dad is. Enough. Kale interrupted sharply. My family background has nothing to do with this. You falsely accused Citrus. So you owe her an apology. Eloan looked between Kale and Citrus. Then let out a cold laugh. You'll regret this. She spat. Before storming out of the room. The teachers in the office exchanged uncertain glances. Kira rubbed her temples. Weary. Citrus. The school will handle this matter seriously. You should go back to class for now. As Citrus left the office, she could no longer hold back her tears. Kale gently pulled her into an empty corner and awkwardly patted her back. Don't cry. It's over now. Thank you. Citrus sobbed. If you hadn't shown up in time, I might have been expelled. Kale's gaze softened. As soon as I saw your message, I came right over. He hesitated, then suddenly said, Citrus, there's something I want to say to you. Citrus looked up at him, her heart racing. Kale's expression was more serious than she had ever seen it, and his normally cold eyes were now filled with warmth. Citrus. Soren's voice suddenly called out from the other end of the hall. Are you okay? I heard about Eloan. He approached and saw the two of them. His words dying in his throat. Kale's expression instantly cooled. And he stepped back, distancing himself. The secret that had almost slipped out was abruptly interrupted. I'm fine. Citrus forced a smile at Soren. Thanks to Kale. Soren looked at them. His expression complex. Eloan won't give up so easily. Her dad is a school board member. She'll find a way to make this go away. It doesn't matter. Kale said coldly. As long as I'm here, no one can bully Citrus. Those words, full of protectiveness, warmed Citrus's heart and darkened Soren's expression even more. Citrus. Soren suddenly said. Can we talk alone? Citrus glanced at Kale, who nodded slightly. I'll go get you a bottle of water. With that, he turned and left, giving them space. Soren took a deep breath. Citrus. I like you. Citrus's eyes widened in disbelief. What? I like you. Soren repeated, his voice trembling. I've liked you for a long time. I've been too cowardly to admit it. Seeing you get so close to Kale made me realize just how much I care about you. Citrus was completely stunned. Soren. Her childhood friend. Her neighbor. The one she grew up with. Was confessing to her? After everything that had happened? Soren. You don't have to answer now. Soren said with a bitter smile. I know the timing's not right. But. He glanced toward the direction where Kale had left. Be careful with Kale. His background is too complicated. He could hurt you. Citrus shook her head. You don't understand him. Really? Soren's gaze turned sharp. Do you know why he had a falling out with his father? Because he once pushed his father down a flight of stairs. It nearly killed him. Citrus felt like she had been struck by lightning. That's impossible. It's true. Soren lowered his voice. My father knows the lawyer for the Kale family. Kale has a violent streak. Citrus. I don't want to see you get hurt. Citrus's mind was in chaos. Kale? Pushing his father down the stairs? That didn't fit with the Kale she knew, the one who fed stray cats. Who stayed up late making notes for her. It was like two completely different people. I only believe what he tells me, she said softly. Finally. Soren nodded solemnly and left. After a while, Kale returned, handing her a bottle of water. Are you okay? Citrus took the bottle and couldn't help but study his expression. There was only concern in his eyes, now no trace of violence. Could what Soren said be true? Kale. She gathered her courage to ask. How did you fall out with your father? Kale stiffened for a moment. Why are you asking this all of a sudden? I just want to understand you better. Kale was silent for a moment before shaking his head. Not now, he said, glancing at his watch. I have to go back to the hospital. You take care of yourself. As she watched him walk away, Citrus's heart was in turmoil. She believed Kale wasn't a bad person. But Soren's words felt like a thorn, stabbing painfully at her heart. On her way home from school that day, Citrus realized someone was following her. Turning around, she saw Eloan and her group of followers. Citrus. Eloan blocked her path with a malicious smile. Did you think today's over? Let me tell you. It's far from over. Citrus stepped back warily. What do you want? Eloan leaned in closer, lowering her voice. I know Kale's secret. If you don't want the whole school to know what kind of person he really is, stay away from him. What secret? Eloan sneered. Ask him. Ask him about the scars on his arm. Ask him why he transferred schools. Ask him why he's afraid to go to the hospital. She paused, her voice dripping with meaning. Once you know the truth, let's see if you'll still dare to be close to him. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Citrus standing in confusion and anxiety. What could he have gone through? Kale. What secrets are you hiding? That weekend, Citrus stayed at home, restlessly going over her homework. Her mother had gone to work the night shift, and she was alone. The raindrops tapping on the window mirrored her scattered thoughts. Her phone vibrated with a message from Kale. Can we video chat? I need to talk to you. After a moment's hesitation, Citrus dialed the video call. Kale's tired face appeared on the screen, with the hospital corridor visible in the background. How's your dad? She asked softly. He's stable. Kale rubbed his temples. Citrus. About yesterday. Eloan contacted me. Citrus said directly. She said. She knows your secret. Kale's expression froze. What secret? She said. Citrus gathered her courage. That the scars on your arm have a story. That you're afraid to go to the hospital. And she couldn't bring herself to say something about pushing your father down the stairs. Kale was silent for a long time. So long that Citrus thought the signal had dropped. When he finally spoke again, his voice was hoarse. Do you want to know the truth? Citrus nodded. Okay. Kale sighed deeply. But not over video. Tomorrow at 3 p. Can you come to the hospital? Room 803. I'll tell you everything. After hanging up, Citrus tossed and turned. She was eager to understand Kale's past, but she was also afraid that reopening those old wounds might hurt him even more. The next afternoon, Citrus arrived at the hospital on time. She pushed open the door to room 803 and saw Kale sitting by the window, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting striped shadows on his face. A middle-aged man was lying on the bed, looking somewhat similar to Kale, but much more serious and cold. He was resting with his eyes closed. Kale gestured for her to keep quiet, then led her to the hallway. My dad just fell asleep, he whispered. Let's talk here. Citrus nodded, her heartbeat quickening. Kale looked even more exhausted than yesterday, with dark circles under his eyes. Evidence that he probably hadn't slept at all. Kale looked her straight in the eyes. I did push my father. But it wasn't the way Lo and described it. Citrus held her breath, waiting for the rest. It happened last winter. Kale's voice was calm, but Citrus could feel the repressed emotions beneath it. My father opposed me participating in a math competition. And we argued. He hit me. That happens often. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing faint scars on his arm. These are the lessons he taught me. Citrus gasped in shock, her heart aching so much she could barely breathe. He was especially angry that day because I secretly signed up for the National Math Olympiad. Cale continued. He grabbed a desk clamp and threw it at me. I dodged it and instinctively pushed him away. He lost his balance and fell down the stairs. And then? Citrus asked softly. Then he was hospitalized. Broke his right leg. Cale forced a smile. He claimed it was an accidental fall, but privately, he threatened me. He said if I ever rebelled again, he'd send me to a juvenile detention center. Citrus finally understood why Cale always kept to himself, why he was so tense about his father's hospitalization, and why his family situation was so complicated. So you transferred schools? Yeah. Cale nodded. I asked to transfer to a regular public school, far away from the elite circles he planned for me. He agreed, thinking it would teach me a lesson and make me obedient. Cale gave a sarcastic smile. But he didn't expect that I'd do just fine at a regular school and meet you. Citrus's heart skipped a beat. The way Cale looked at her now was so gentle. A far cry from the coldness when he'd talked about that dark past. Now you know everything. Cale spoke softly. I did hurt my father. Though not intentionally. With someone like me. Do you still? It wasn't your fault. Citrus impulsively grabbed his hand. You were just defending yourself. Cale stared at her in surprise. Hope flickering in his eyes. Do you really think that? Of course. Citrus said firmly. Your father was the one in the wrong. You don't have violent tendencies. Cale. The Cale I know is the one who helps classmates with problems. Feeds stray cats. Stays up late to help me with notes. Cale's eyes lit up. He tightly grasped her hand. Citrus. What are you two doing? A cold voice interrupted them. At the door of the room stood Cale's father, who had apparently woken up and was now glaring at their joined hands. Cale immediately stepped in front of Citrus. Dad. This is Citrus. My classmate. Classmate? Cale's father scoffed. Is this the important person you mentioned? He eyed Citrus up and down, and the disdain in his gaze made her instinctively shrink back. Hello, Uncle Endo. She greeted awkwardly. Cale's father didn't respond, only turning to Cale and saying, Come in. We need to talk. Cale stood still, refusing to move. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of Citrus. In front of her? Cale's father's voice suddenly grew louder. Fine, what out a sigh. I'll be blunt then. He pointed at Citrus. This girl isn't worthy of our Cale family. I've arranged for Ada's daughter to meet you next week. Citrus was struck as though by a thunderbolt, her face draining of color. Cale, trembling with anger, shouted, I'm not meeting Ada's daughter. Citrus is the one I like. Please respect her. Like? Cale's father scoffed. How old are you? What do you even know about liking? She only wants our money. That's not true. Cale roared. Citrus has no idea about our family's situation. She's nothing like the people you know. Cale's father's face turned whited. Cale. Don't force me to take extreme measures. If you persist in this foolishness, don't blame me for making sure this girl and her family can't stay in this city. Those words felt like a bucket of cold water splashed on Citrus. She believed Cale's father had the power to do it, and she knew he would if it came to that. For Cale's future. For her mother's safety. Uncle, hadn't so psi. She suddenly spoke. Her voice in her vingwom calm. You've misunderstood. Cale and I are just classmates. She pulled her hand from Cale's. I should go home now. My mom's waiting for me. Citrus. Cale looked at her in disbelief. What are you saying? Citrus couldn't look him in the eye. Afraid she would break down. Goodbye, Cale. I hope your father recovers soon. With that, she turned and walked quickly out of the room. Tears streaming down her face as she turned. Behind her, she heard Cale calling out and Cale's father scolding her. But she didn't look back. Outside the hospital, the rain began to fall again. Citrus didn't bother with an umbrella, letting the cold rain mix with her tears on her face. She knew she was doing the right thing. But why did her heart hurt so much? Her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a call from Cale. She didn't answer. She simply turned off her phone. When she returned home, her mom hadn't gotten off work yet. And the house was empty. Save for herself. Citrus curled up on the couch, hugging her knees and crying silently. She thought of Kale's gentle eyes. Of how determined he was when he said Citrus is the one I like. Of the peaceful moments they shared feeding the little orange cat. Was it really all over? Monday morning. Citrus went to school with swollen eyes. She deliberately arrived half an hour early, hoping to avoid Kale. But as she walked toward the school gate, she saw him leaning under the familiar sycamore tree, clearly waiting for her. Citrus. Kale quickly walked over, his face looking disturbingly pale. Why didn't you answer my calls? Citrus lowered her head and quickened her pace. I've been busy. Kale blocked her path. Look at me. His voice held an unprecedented plea. What you said yesterday. It isn't true, right? It's true. Citrus forced herself to stay calm. We're just classmates. And we'll only ever be classmates. Please. Don't come after me anymore. I'm sorry. Kale. I don't deserve your love. Kale looked as if he had been struck by lightning, his face turning ashen. Is it because of my father's words? Citrus. Don't be afraid. I'll protect you and your family. It's not because of that. Citrus steeled herself to lie. I figured it out. Soren's right. We're too different. You're the young master of the Kale family group, and I'm just a poor student. We should never have crossed paths. Kale's eyes turned sharp. Soren? What did he say to you? He said. Citrus bit her lip. He said your background is too complicated, and it would hurt me and my family. He was right. So you choose to believe him over me? Kale's voice trembled with deep hurt. Citrus didn't answer. She just kept her head down and walked quickly toward the school gate. She couldn't look back. She was afraid that if she saw the disappointment in Kale's eyes, she would soften. In the classroom, it seemed Soren had been waiting for her. Citrus? He asked, concerned. Are you okay? Citrus shook her head, not wanting to speak. She mechanically took out her textbook, but when she glanced at her seat, once the place where she and Kale sat together, it was now empty. Kale's books were gone. He transferred classes. Soren said softly. Kira announced it just now. He's been moved to class 3. Citrus's heart ached like it was being torn apart, but she just nodded. Oh. The entire day passed in a daze. She couldn't concentrate on her lessons or eat her lunch. After school, she unconsciously found her way to the back garden, hoping to see the little orange cat. But in that familiar corner, the cat bowl was gone, and there was no sign of the orange cat in the bushes. It was as if everything had never happened. As if Kale had never walked into her life. When she returned home, her mom had gotten off for Curly, and was in the kitchen, cooking. Citrus, she said cheerfully. I have good news. What good news? Citrus forced herself to muster some energy. They promoted me at work. Her mom said excitedly. And the boss said they can advance me 6 months' salary so we can move to a nicer place. Citrus froze. It was too coincidental. Too unsettling. Which company? She asked carefully. The cleaning company under Kale's family group, her mom answered casually. What's wrong? Citrus felt like she had fallen into an ice pit. Kale's father was making his move. Is this his compensation or a warning? Should she tell her mom the truth? But if she did, her mom would probably refuse the job out of pride, and they would go back to their struggling days. Citrus? Her mom asked, concerned. You don't look well. Are you sick? I'm fine. Citrus forced a smile. I'm just so happy for you. A month passed, and the cherry blossoms on campus bloomed and withered. Citrus mechanically flipped through her textbook, her gaze occasionally drifting toward the classroom door. Since Kale transferred classes, she hadn't seen him at school. Some said he had taken a leave of absence. Others said he had gone abroad, but no one knew the exact details. Citrus. Leora poked her with a pen. How do you solve this problem? Citrus snapped out of her thoughts and forced herself to focus. She couldn't let her mom's efforts go to waste. She had to get into a good college. As for Kale, she shook her head, trying to push his figure out of her mind. The bell rang, and Kira, the homeroom teacher, called out to her. Citrus. The principal wants to see you. The principal? Citrus's heart skipped a beat. What's this about? Kira shook her head. I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem like anything bad. In the principal's office, Hanningful. Besides the principal himself, there was an neatly dressed middle-aged man sitting. Citrus immediately recognized the eyes. So strikingly similar to Kale Skull's father. Citrus. The principal said kindly. This is Thorn from the Kale family group. He would like to speak with you. Citrus's fingers involuntarily twisted together. Why was Kale's father looking for her? Was he here to warn her to stay away from Kale? Or was he here to take back her mother's job opportunity? Citrus. Kale's father began. His voice much calmer than during their hospital meeting. I owe you an apology. Citrus looked up in surprise. In the past month, I've looked into a lot of things. Kale's father continued warily, rubbing his temples. Including how Eloan falsely accused you of stealing class funds. And how much my son cares about you. Citrus's heart began to race. But she remained silent. Kale ran away from home. Kale's father suddenly said. Just last week. After the turmoil of this past month. I'm exhausted too. What? Citrus gasped, immediately regretting her outburst. Kale's father gave a bitter smile. He left a letter saying he wanted to chase his dream of mathematics. He also said. He paused. He also said that a world without you means nothing to him. Citrus's eyes welled up in an instant. And she quickly lowered her head. My son has always been stubborn. Kale's father continued. But I've never seen him so persistent about anyone or anything. He sighed. Citrus. I need your help to find him. He may contact you. Citrus shook her head. He won't. We. She couldn't finish the sentence. Because you think I threatened you and your family? Kale's father gave a bitter laugh. I've already fired the private detective who helped me gather information. Your mother's job was earned on her own merits. It had nothing to do with me. Citrus's head snapped up. Really? Of course. Really? Kale's father replied. I may have been forceful in front of my son. But I would never do anything that could harm others. He handed her a business card. If you hear from Kale, please contact me immediately. I'm very worried about him. As she walked out of the principal's office, Citrus's mind was a whirl of confusion. Kale had run away from home? Where could he have gone? Why had he taken such extreme measures for her? On her way home, she inexplicably found herself wandering toward the school's back garden. The corner where the cat's bowl used to be was now overgrown with weeds. Little Orange was long gone. Looking for the cat? Citrus jumped, turning to see the janitor, Orson, standing behind her with a broom in hand. Orson. She forced a smile. Do you know where the orange cat went? Orson shook his head. No idea. But that tall, quiet guy who used to feed the cat came back a few days ago. He took the cat with him. Citrus's heart skipped a beat. Kale? He came to the school? Yeah. The quiet guy. Orson nodded. He even asked me if you had been here. You. What did you say? I told him the truth. Of course. Orson sighed. I said you came by every day. Stood for a while. And then left. His eyes turned red when he heard that. And then he just took the cat and left. Citrus's heart twisted in knots. Kale had come to find her. And she hadn't known. When she got home, her mother was busy in the kitchen. Ever since her promotion, her smile had become more frequent. And her white hairs seemed to have lessened. As Citrus watched her mother's back, a sudden decision took root in her mind. Mom. She walked into the kitchen. I need to ask you something. Her mother turned around. Spatula still in hand. What's up? Sweetie? My job. Does it really have anything to do with the Kale family? Her mother froze for a moment before smiling. Of course not. The company assessed my performance over the past 3 years and decided I deserved the promotion. She looked at Citrus curiously. Why do you ask? Citrus shook her head. The heavy weight in her heart finally lifting. It's nothing. Just wanted to make sure. Back in her room, she opened her phone. After hesitating for a long time, she finally unblocked Kale. The chat history was still from a month ago. The last message from him saying, I'm always here. Her finger hovered above the screen. Unsure what to type. What should she say? Sorry for misunderstanding you. Thank you for always protecting me. I miss you. In the end, she only sent one simple message. How is little orange? As soon as she sent it, she regretted it. How silly. After a month of silence, her first message was about the cat. Just as she was about to retract it, her phone vibrated. Kale replied, he's gotten fat. Just those 3 simple words made Citrus's tears flood uncontrollably. She shakily typed, where are you? In a safe place. Kale replied, how about you? Are you doing okay? Citrus didn't know how to answer. This past month, she had been like a walking zombie, mechanically going to school, coming home, and studying, with an emptiness inside her. Citrus? Her mother knocked on the door. Dinner's ready. I'll be right there. She quickly wiped her tears and replied, my dad's looking for you. He's very worried. Kale's reply was brief, he knows where I am. What do you mean? Citrus was about to ask more when another message came through. Tomorrow at 3 p. Can you meet me at our old spot? I need to talk to you in person. The old spot. The corner of the back garden. Citrus's heart raced, and her fingers trembled uncontrollably as she typed, okay. That night, she tossed and turned, both eager and fearful about their meeting the next day. What did Kale want to say? Where had he been for the past month? Why had his father said he couldn't find him, but Kale said his father knew where he was? The next afternoon, Citrus arrived at their meeting place 2 hours early. The late spring sunlight was warm, shining on the corner where the cat's bowl had once been. She crouched down and gently touched the earth, as if doing so would allow her to touch the memories of the past. You're early. Citrus looked up with a start. Kale stood in the sunlight, wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans, holding a much fatter little orange in his arms. He had lost a lot of weight, dark circles under his eyes, but his gaze was still clear and determined. Kale. Citrus stood up, her voice trembling. Little Orange recognized her immediately and jumped from Kale's arms to nuzzle against her leg. Citrus bent down to pet it, using the moment to hide her tears. I have a lot to say, Kale whispered, but first, I owe you an apology. Citrus looked up in surprise. An apology? For what? For my father's threats. For leaving without telling anyone. And, he took a deep breath. For not telling you who I really am sooner. Citrus shook her head. I should be the one apologizing. I shouldn't have doubted you. I shouldn't have listened to Soren. Soren? Kale frowned. What did he say? Citrus suddenly realized she had let something slip and reluctantly told Kale everything Soren had told her. After hearing her, Kale's expression grew complicated. Some of it is true, he admitted. But the order is wrong. My father struck first. I pushed him in self-defense. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing scars on his arm. These, and many more you can't see, are his way of educating me. Citrus felt a pang of heartache and couldn't find the words. She simply reached out and gently held his hand. I didn't leave home because of you, Kale continued, but because I finally found the courage to fight back. I went to my grandmother. She's the only one who's ever supported me in studying math. Your grandmother? Yes. Kale's tone softened. After my mother died, my father remarried and sent me to boarding school. Only my grandmother cared about me. She lives in an old house on the outskirts of the city. Little Orange is living with her now. Citrus suddenly understood. So your father knows where you are because my grandmother told him immediately. Kale nodded. We made an agreement, I'll go back home. But he has to respect my choice as my university major. And, he looked deeply into Citrus's eyes. The person I choose. Citrus's face immediately flushed, her heartbeat quickening as though it might burst from her chest. Citrus. Kale took a step forward, closing the distance between them. This past month, I've come to understand so much. I don't want to live in my father's shadow anymore. And I don't want to hide my feelings. I've thought about it. And I like you. From the first day you became my desk mate. From that moment I noticed the scent of soap on you. Tears finally fell from Citrus's eyes. But, can your family really accept a curb girl like me? My father has compromised, Kale said softly. Aside from him, no one can stop my happiness. He gently wiped away her tears. When he saw how I starved myself after leaving home, he got scared. And he smiled slightly. I told him that if he couldn't accept you, I'd change my surname to my grandmother's and give up everything in the Kale family. Citrus stared at him in shock. Did you really say that? I did. Kale spoke earnestly. Citrus, I know this is sudden, and you might need time to think it over. But I want to tell you, whatever your decision is, I will respect it. Sunlight bathed them both as little Orange played at their feet. Citrus looked at the boy before her, the one who had fought the world for her. And the answer in her heart became crystal clear. I don't need to think about it, she whispered, taking a step forward and wrapping her arms around Kale. I like you too. Always have. I'm sorry. You took 99 steps. And I've only taken this one. Kale's body stiffened for a moment. Then he hugged her tightly. His grip so strong it almost took her breath away. I thought I lost you, he whispered in her ear, his voice trembling. Citrus buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent mixed with the warmth of sunlight. You didn't. They stood there quietly, embracing each other until little Orange impatiently mewed. Kale laughed and let go, pulling a small box from his pocket. This is for you. Citrus opened the box. And inside was a delicate soap shaped like a little cat, with a faint jasmine fragrance. This is. I made it myself, Kale said bashfully. I learned it from my grandmother. I wanted to tell you. I like your soap scent. Not because I miss something, but because it's a part of you. Citrus was so moved she couldn't speak. She simply held the soap tightly in her hand. This was the most thoughtful gift she had ever received. And, Kale continued, my father has agreed that I can apply to a local university. So, if you also. I want to apply to the normal university, Citrus said quickly. It's right here in the city. Kale's eyes lit up. That's great. He hesitated for a moment. I have another idea. About your mom. Citrus looked at him cautiously. What idea? Don't worry. Kale laughed. I just thought. If your mom is willing. The Kale family group headquarters needs a logistics manager. With double the salary she's getting now. Citrus shook her head. No. Kale. I can't accept special treatment. It's not special treatment. Kale spoke seriously. I've checked. Your mom is doing great in her current position. She's more than qualified. I'm just offering her an opportunity. She still has to go through the normal interview process. Citrus nodded. Then. I can ask her. They talked until the sun began to set, sharing the little moments from the past month. Kale told her that he had reached a tentative reconciliation with his father, who agreed to let him apply to the math department. But the condition was that he would have to return to the family business after graduation. But that's still far away, Kale said with a smile. At least for these 4 years. I can do what I love. Citrus told him about Soren. Since Kale transferred classes, Soren had apologized to her several times and even admitted that he had said those things out of jealousy. He's going abroad next week, Citrus said. He's going early to adjust to the language environment. Kale nodded. He's a smart guy. Just too late in realizing his feelings. On the way home, Citrus's steps were so light she felt as though she could fly. Kale walked beside her, their hands occasionally brushing, sending waves of electricity through her. By the way, Kale suddenly said, I have a surprise for you at the graduation ceremony. What surprise? Kale smiled mysteriously. You'll find out when the time comes. Citrus didn't ask further. At that moment, the sun was just right, the breeze gentle, and the person she liked was by her side. That was enough. The day of the graduation ceremony arrived. Bright and sunny. Citrus stood in the line, wearing a white dress, her eyes constantly drifting toward the audience. Kale had promised to attend her graduation ceremony, but he still hadn't shown up. Stop looking, Leora whispered in her ear. Your campus king will definitely come. Citrus blushed. Who's looking? The principal began his speech, and Citrus forced herself to concentrate. Just then, she saw a familiar figure standing behind the principal Kale. dressed in a formal shirt and trousers. His hair neatly combed. Looking almost unrecognizable. Now, let's hear from a representative of the Kale family group. The principal suddenly announced. Citrus's eyes widened. Kale walked confidently up to the microphone. His gaze sweeping through the crowd. He quickly locked eyes with her. Good afternoon, teachers, students, and parents. His voice was steady and powerful. I'm Kale. And I'm here on behalf of the Kale family group to announce a new scholarship program. The crowd gasped. No one had expected that the silent campus king was actually the heir of the Kale family group. The Keeming Scholarship was established for students who excel academically but come from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kale continued, his eyes never leaving Citrus. Every year, it will fund 5 students for all their tuition and living expenses throughout their university years. The audience erupted in applause. Citrus stood frozen, staring at the dazzling Kale on stage, almost not recognizing the same boy who used to sleep in the last row of class. The list of winners will be announced by the school. Kale smiled. But I want to specially mention the inspiration for this scholarship, Citrus. The classmate who's always been by my side. The spotlight instantly shifted to Citrus. And her face flushed a deep red. Her diligence, perseverance, and kindness have taught me the true meaning of education. Kale's voice softened. So, I want to help more students like her pursue their dreams. The applause erupted again. Even more enthusiastic than before. Citrus saw Kira wiping away tears. And even the usually serious principal smiled. Finally, heading so filled my and sigh. Kale took a deep breath. I want to take this opportunity to say a few words to a very special girl. The room fell silent. Everyone sensing the shift in atmosphere. Citrus. Kale's eyes locked with hers. His voice trembling slightly. Do you remember when we first met? You said I looked scary. But I thought the scent of your soap was lovely. A few girls sighed enviously. Citrus felt her heart race. As if it might leap out of her chest. In these 3 years. You've shown me what true courage is. What unconditional love really means. Kale continued, his voice growing firmer. Today, in front of everyone, I want to ask you. He stepped down from the stage and walked towards her. Kneeling in front of her. From his pocket, he pulled out a small, delicate box. When he opened it, inside wasn't a ring, but a small, soap-shaped book. Citrus? Will you continue to learn and grow with me through university? Becoming each other's support? The audience burst into cheers and applause. Citrus's eyes welled up, and looking at the boy who had changed everything for her. She nodded vigorously. Yes, cut in and session. I will. Kale stood and gently enveloped her in his arms. The applause and whistles grew louder. Citrus buried her face in his chest, inhaling the familiar scent, mixed with the freshness of his new shirt, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Is this the surprise you were talking about? She whispered. Kale laughed softly and pulled away from her. Just a part of it. The bigger surprise is outside. After the ceremony, Kale took Citrus's hand and led her out of the school gates. A sleek black car was parked outside, with an elegant elderly woman and a sharply dressed middle-aged man standing by it. Kale's father. Citrus's grip on Kale's hand tight and with nervousness. Don't worry, Kale whispered. They're here to congratulate you. The elderly woman, Kale's grandmother, greeted her warmly, embracing her. It's finally nice to meet you, dear. Kale talks about you all the time. Kale's father gave a slightly awkward nod and a polite greeting. Congratulations on your graduation, Citrus. Your transcript is excellent. Thank you, Uncle. Hadn't fulfilled my session. Citrus responded politely, still feeling a bit nervous. I've talked it over with Grandma, Kale suddenly said. And for the summer, we'd like to invite you and your aunt to stay at our beach house for a few days. Would that be okay? Citrus looked at him in surprise. This? Of course. If your aunt is busy. We understand, Kale's grandmother said kindly. We just wanted to find a chance to get to know you better. Citrus was so touched that she couldn't find the words. Only nodding in agreement. Kale squeezed her hand. A smile spreading across his face. Just then, right on a low sorry. A familiar voice called from behind. Citrus. Soren, in his graduation gown, stood there, holding his diploma. His expression complicated as he looked at their hands intertwined. Soren. Citrus smiled. Congratulations on your graduation. Soren nodded. Then turned to Kale. And congratulations to you. That scholarship. It means a lot. Kale released Citrus's hand and stepped forward. Thank you. I heard you're heading to England? Yeah. I leave next week, Soren said, taking a deep breath. He suddenly extended his hand to Kale. I'm sorry for the past. Kale shook his hand. It's all in the past. The two boys exchanged a smile, and the years of tension between them seemed to vanish in that moment. Soren gave one last look at Citrus. His eyes filled with reluctance, but also a sense of release. I wish you both happiness. As she watched Soren walk away, Citrus was filled with mixed emotions. The childhood friend who once disliked her soap smell was now sincerely wishing her well with someone else. Time, indeed, could change so many things. Let's go. Kale took her hand again. Little Orange is still waiting for us at Grandma's. 1 year later, on the campus of a teacher's college. Citrus, your boyfriend made the news again. Her roommate burst into the dorm room, holding up her phone. Citrus took the phone, and on the screen was an article titled Kale Family Group's Young Heirs Innovative Project Wins National Award, with a photo of Kale in a sharp suit, standing proudly on the podium. Is he coming back today? Her roommate asked, curious. Citrus nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Yes, radalalo sorry. He said he has a surprise for me. That evening, Kale arrived as promised. He had gotten a little tanner and looked more mature and composed. But when he saw Citrus, the spark in his eyes was still as fiery as when they were younger. Guess what I brought you? He smiled mysteriously, pulling an exquisite gift box from his backpack. Citrus opened the box, revealing a uniquely shaped soap, designed like a small trophy, with a refreshing lemon scent. It's a new product I developed, Kale said proudly. I made it using the ancient techniques your mother taught me, pure, natural, and additive-free. The Kale Family Group will be launching this line next month. Citrus looked at him, surprised. You had my mom teach you how to make soap? Yeah. Kale grinned. I learned it when I visited her last month. This line is called Citrus Essence, named after you. Citrus was left speechless, deeply moved. A year ago, she had felt self-conscious about the scent of her soap. Now, that same scent would inspire a new product line for the Kale Family Group. And Kale pulled out a set of keys from his pocket. I rented an apartment near the school. If you're willing, you can come over on weekends and cook for me. He winked. Of course. Only if your mom approves. Citrus took the keys, her heart full of sweet anticipation. Kale respected every step of her choices, never overstepping, yet always there when she needed him. My mom really likes you, she said with a laugh. Ever since you complimented her braised pork. She asks every time we talk when you'll come over for dinner again. Kale laughed, pulling her into an embrace. Sunlight poured through the window, casting a warm glow on them, and the air was filled with the faint scent of soap, the scent of the soap Kale had given her, now lingering on her clothes. The scent that had once made her self-conscious had now become the most special connection between them, symbolizing pure acceptance and love. In Kale's warm embrace, Citrus thought back to what he had said to her on graduation day. No matter what the future holds, we'll become more and more pure, like this soap, through the washing of time, getting closer to each other's true essence. And now, she finally understood some sense. Some people are destined to accompany you for a lifetime. The end. On the day I divorced, my ex-husband Michael was standing by the Civil Affairs Bureau entrance, lighting a cigarette. Squinting at me, he said, Nina, a woman like you can only be a burden to others. Nothing else. I stood by the roadside holding my suitcase, watching his car drive off, the exhaust fumes spraying all over me. At that moment, I suddenly laughed. A burden? Fine. Let's see about that. Michael and I were college classmates and got married right after graduation. Back then, one en Koso Leazamadinai. He had just started at a foreign company. His salary wasn't high, but it was stable. To support him, I quit my design job and took on some freelance work from home while taking care of his meals and daily needs. He said, "Nina, once I get promoted and earn more, I'll make sure you live a good life." I believed him. 3 years later, he did get promoted and his salary doubled. But my life only got harder. He complained that the food I made wasn't to his taste, said I earned too little from my side jobs, and scolded me for staying at home all day with no ambition. One time, he came home drunk and pointed at my nose, yelling, "Look at other men's wives, successful career women. And you? You just stay cooped up at home like a useless person." I endured it. Until one day, I saw a message on his phone. "Michael, when are you getting divorced? I'm waiting for you." The sender was saved as Director Lin. I confronted him with the phone. He didn't even try to explain and just admitted, "Yes, I cheated. Director Lin can give me resources. Help me climb up. What about you? What can you do besides spending my money?" I was shaking with anger. But he was impatient. "Nina, stop making a fuss. Let's get a divorce. You're not worthy of the current me." "Not worthy?" I laughed. Back when he was too poor to even pay rent, I stayed up late drawing to support us. Now that he's gotten somewhere, he thinks I'm holding him back? Fine, let out a low sigh. We'll divorce. The divorce process was quick. He was eager to run off with his new lover. Didn't even bother to fight over property, just threw me 100 yuan as a breakup fee. I took that money and immediately registered a new design studio. I had been top of my class in university. Even won awards for my graduation project. But I had given up opportunities at big companies for Michael. Now, I had nothing to hold me back. At first, the studio had no clients. I took the cheapest gigs. A few hundred yuan a job. I ran errands during the day and worked late into the night modifying designs. Drinking coffee when tired. Resting briefly on the desk when exhausted. Friends told me not to overwork myself. But I had a fire burning inside. Michael thought I was useless. I'd show him what I could do without him. 6 months later, the studio ended a decent project, brand design for a newly opened trendy restaurant. The client, a young female boss named Vivian, was decisive. After seeing my portfolio, she said, "It's you. Price doesn't matter. I want results." I worked like crazy, pulling 3 all-nighters in a row. When I delivered the draft, Vivian was impressed and immediately introduced me to a big client. Gradually, my studio gained a good reputation. Orders grew, and companies began reaching out to me for cooperation. Michael, on the other hand, got promoted to manager but was having a hard time. Director Lin dumped him for an even higher-up executive. One late night, while I was working overtime fixing designs, my phone rang. It was Michael, drunk and slurring. "Nina, I was wrong. Will you come back?" I paused, then sneered. "Michael, you're drunk, aren't you?" He babbled about regrets. How I was still the best. How Director Lin didn't love him. I hung up. The next day, he called again. Sober this time and soft as silk. "Nina, let's remarry. I have money now and can take care of you." I cut him off. "Michael, did you forget? You used to say I was a burden. Now you just want a free housekeeper?" He was speechless. I smiled coldly and said slowly, "Sorry. I don't need you to support me anymore." Then I hung up and blocked his number. Another 6 months passed, and my studio moved to a downtown office building. The team grew from just me to about 10 employees. Vivian became a regular client and introduced me to many high-end contacts. At a dinner once, she raised her glass and winked. "Nina, do you know why I chose you?" I shook my head. She smiled. "Because you have fire in your eyes, a fire of not giving up." I was stunned. Then smiled back. Yeah, I wasn't willing to give up. Not willing to be seen as a burden. Not willing to live a weak life. And definitely not willing to let those who looked down on me gloat. Now I could finally stand tall and tell them, "I'm better off without you." Michael started showing up more often in my life. First, pretending to coincidentally meet me. I'd be at a cafe with a client, and he'd just happen to come by coffee. holding his cup and flashing a fake smile. Mina. What a coincidence. Coincidence? I glanced at the watch on his wrist. That was the birthday gift I scrimped and saved for 3 months to buy him. Now, divorced. He still wears it. Pretending to care? I ignored him, looking down at my documents. But he persisted, asking if I was doing well, if the studio was busy, even trying to add me back on WeChat. I looked up and smiled. Michael, did you forget? You said a woman like me only drags others down. His face froze. Then he started sending afternoon tea to my employees. The receptionist, confused but cheerful, said, Mina, your ex is nice. He treats us to desserts every day. I threw the entire box of dessert into the trash in front of everyone. From now on, anything he sends, refuse it. Everyone was silent, unsure what to say. Later, he even waited for me outside my office building. That night, I got off work at 10 p.m. Just stepped out of the elevator when I saw him leaning against his car, smoking. When he saw me, he stubbed up a cigarette and came over. Mina, let's talk. I dodged him and kept walking straight ahead. He suddenly grabbed my wrist with such force that I winced in pain. Let go. I won't. His voice suddenly raised. Mina, how can you treat me like this? I already swallowed my pride. What more do you want? I sneered coldly. Michael, do you really think that just because you turned back, I'm supposed to gratefully accept it? He was momentarily speechless, and the grip on my wrist loosened a bit. I took the chance to shake him off and walked away without looking back. The next day, heading fulfilled my obsession, I saw Michael's post on social media. He had posted a photo of a bar with the caption, "Some people only know how to cherish after they lose." Comments from mutual friends were all the same. What happened? Relationship troubles? I sneered and casually liked the post, not by accident. On purpose. Sure enough, less than 5 minutes later, his call came through. Nina, Adesokara, did you see my post? His voice was filled with restrained excitement. Yes. I saw it. I answered calmly. So? You liked it? He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. Are you still in love with me? I almost laughed out loud. Michael, did you misunderstand something? I said slowly. I liked it just to tell you your act of being all sentimental is really ridiculous. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end. Then he shouted in anger and embarrassment, Mina, don't go too far. I hung up immediately. That weekend, my best friend Lynn Xiaoyu invited me to dinner. As soon as we met, she leaned in mysteriously, Nina, guess who I ran into yesterday? Who? Michael. She rolled her eyes. He was arguing with Director Lin at the mall. It was really ugly. I raised an eyebrow. I thought they broke up a long time ago. They did. But I heard Director Lin hooked up with their company's deputy general manager again. Michael couldn't stand it. So he went to confront her, and she slapped him in public. I burst out laughing. Serves him right. That night when I got home, just at the entrance of the complex, I saw Michael crouching by the flower bed, looking completely defeated. When he saw me, he immediately stood up, eyes red-rimmed. Nina, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. He reeked of alcohol, staggering as he walked. I frowned. You're drunk. I'm not. He suddenly raised his voice. Nina, I regret it. I broke up with Director Lin long ago. You're the only one in my heart. I looked at him coldly. Michael, do you really think that as long as you come back, I'll just wait here for you? He was stunned. Wake up. I turned and walked into the complex. I'm not a garbage dump. The next day, having fulfilled my obsession, I received a text from an unknown number. Nina, don't be so smug. Without me, you are nothing. I smiled and replied. Yeah. Without you, I was nothing, so now I have everything. After sending it, I blocked the number immediately. Michael started playing dirty. Monday morning, just as I arrived at the studio, my assistant came running over nervously. Nina, something happened. Our newly acquired big client suddenly wanted to cancel the contract, citing dissatisfaction with the design style. But just last week, they praised the creativity and even paid the deposit. I called the client's contact directly. Mr. Lee, a betrayal sigh. May I ask what specifically you're unhappy with? We can make adjustments. On the other end, he hesitated. Well, it just doesn't feel quite right. I immediately understood. Did someone say something to you? There was silence for a few seconds. Then Mr. Lee sighed. Mina. Manager Michael said your studio is newly established and inexperienced. My fingers trembled with anger. But I kept my smile. Mr. Lee, you've seen our past projects and know the quality. If private matters are affecting business cooperation, that's truly regrettable. I hung up and slammed the folder on my desk to the floor. But it didn't stop there. In the next week, we lost 3 more clients. Each time, negotiations went well until the last minute. Then, suddenly they backed out. The worst was an old client of 2 years. Who hinted at dinner. Director Nina. Maybe you should apologize to Manager Michael? He's been spreading rumors that anyone working with you is opposing him. I raised my glass and drank it all. Mr. Wang. You know the value of my design. If it's difficult for you, heading fulfilled and Sasher. We don't have to sign this deal. After leaving the restaurant, I called Vivian. Got time? Help me check what Michael's been up to lately. Vivian's efficiency was amazing. By noon the next day, she threw a file on my desk. Your ex-husband recently gained a new backer. Mr. Zhao from Wansheng Group. Using this connection, he's grabbing resources in your industry. Flipping through the documents, I grew increasingly alarmed. Michael was not only poaching my clients, but also spreading rumors that my studio outsources design work and lacks quality control. Want me to help teach him a lesson? Vivian squinted. I know Mr. Zhao's wife. I shook my head. No need. I'll handle it myself. That weekend, I went to a college reunion. Our classmates from the design department had all done well, some influential in the industry. After a few drinks, I casually mentioned, recently had a weird experience. Someone spread rumors to sabotage me, saying our studio outsources designs. Who's that rotten person? The class president slammed the table. I smiled bitterly. Michael. What? Everyone froze. These classmates witnessed our wedding. The class monitor sneered. I'm organizing an industry summit. I had invited his company. But now it seems unnecessary. The retaliation came faster than expected. Monday morning, Michael called me nonstop. I rejected every call. Eventually, he switched numbers and shouted as soon as I answered. Nina. What did you do? I'll easily painted my nails. Don't understand what you're saying. Don't play dumb. Why did Wansheng suddenly cancel cooperation with us? Why did the summit exclude our company? I laughed lightly. Manager Michael. Business is a battlefield. If you can't afford to lose, then don't play. Then came the sound of something breaking, followed by Michael's angry curses. Just wait. 3 days later, I received a court summons. Michael sued me for commercial defamation and demanded 500 yuan in compensation. Looking at the summons, tears welled up in my eyes. This was the man I once loved, and now, to suppress me, he resorted to such means. When Vivian found out, she exploded. Is he crazy? He was the one who spread rumors first. But I was calm. Perfect. I'll take this chance to settle things once and for all. The day before the court hearing, Michael sent me a text. It's not too late to withdraw the lawsuit. Just publicly apologize. I replied with 8 words, see you in court. Mr. Michael. Then I put my phone on silent and focused on preparing my evidence. Over the years, I had carefully saved every designed draft, every contract, and every client review from the studio. I wanted to see exactly who was slandering him. In court, Michael's lawyer was aggressive. The defendant has long spread false statements in the industry, seriously damaging our client's business reputation. I sat quietly in the defendant's seat, watching Michael in his suit across from me. He kept glancing at me with a smug look, confident he had won. Until my lawyer played a recording. Mr. Lee. Manager Michael said your studio is newly established and inexperienced. Anyone who cooperates with you is just picking a fight with him. Michael's face instantly went pale at the clear voices on the tape. My lawyer calmly presented a stack of documents. These are emails from 12 companies terminating cooperation with the defendant over the past 3 months, all mentioning manager Michael's advice. Also, heading till session. Here are written testimonies from 6 industry insiders, confirming the plaintiff repeatedly slandered the defendant's studio in public. The judge flipped through the evidence when Michael's lawyer suddenly stood up. Objection. This evidence is irrelevant to the case. My lawyer sneered. The plaintiff filed a lawsuit accusing my client of commercial defamation. Now we've proven who the real defamer is. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. During recess, Michael caught me in the hallway. Nina, do you have to be so ruthless? I looked at his reddened eyes and suddenly found it funny. Michael, you were the one who sued me first. I can drop the lawsuit. He lowered his voice. As long as you promise not to pursue it further. I shook my head and walked away. At that moment, I was certain I had completely let go of this man. The verdict was no surprise. The court not only dismissed all of Michael's claims, but also ruled that he committed commercial defamation. He was ordered to publish a public apology in industry media and compensate me 80,000 yuan for economic losses. As I walked out of the courthouse, Michael rushed up and grabbed my arm. Nina, let's talk. I shrugged off his hand. Mr. Michael, please mind the occasion. His expression twisted suddenly. You think you've won? I'm telling you, this isn't over. A week later, I received a bank transfer notification. The 80,000 yuan compensation had arrived. That same day, Vivian showed me a screenshot from a social media post. Michael was suspended from his company pending an investigation for unfair competition. Serves him right, Vivian said with a smirk. I heard Director Xiao was furious. Feeling used by him. I turned off my phone screen. Enough about him. Let's get back to business. We need to prepare for next week's International Design Expo. During prep for the expo, the studio ended a big contract, a full packaging design series for a well-known brand. At the signing, the brand director smiled. Director Nina, we researched the market. Although your studio is young, your reputation is the best. I smiled and handed over the contract. We won't disappoint you. At the celebration banquet, my assistant Xiao Zhang got drunk and slurred. Nina, can we say we've pulled off a comeback now? I raised my glass, looking out at the neon lights. This is just the beginning. A month later, I ran into Michael at the design expo. He wore a wrinkled suit and stood not far from our booth, watching me surrounded by media with a complicated expression. When reporters asked about the secret to success, I smiled at the camera. Thanks to everyone who underestimated me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Michael's retreating figure, defeated and pathetic like a dog that had lost its home. After the expo, at the celebration party, my phone suddenly buzzed. A message from an unknown number, a photo of Michael and a middle-aged man talking closely in a CAF. The caption read, "They're investigating your studio's taxes." I stared at the middle-aged man in the photo for estimated me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Michael's retreating figure, defeated and pathetic like a dog that had lost its home. After the expo, at the celebration party, my phone suddenly buzzed. A message from an unknown number, a photo of Michael and a middle-aged man talking closely in a CAF. The caption read, "They're investigating your studio's taxes." I stared at the middle-aged man in the photo for 3 seconds, then recognized him. Leo, the tax audit chief. Vivian grabbed my phone, took a look, and cursed. Michael's playing dirty. I was surprisingly calm. Let them check. Every single one of our accounts is clean. The problem isn't that, Vivian said through gritted teeth. If tax authorities audit you, even if nothing's wrong, it will affect your business reputation. I immediately called the finance director. Double-check all the accounts from the past 3 years, especially any large transactions. The next morning, 2 uniformed officers showed up at my studio. Miss Nina, and on a low sigh, someone reported your studio for suspected tax evasion. This is the inspection notice. The studio fell silent. Everyone looked at me. I calmly accepted the notice. We will fully cooperate. When I turned, I saw Assistant Xiao Zhang's face turn pale. The audit lasted a full week. Every day staff came to collect documents and interview employees. The atmosphere was heavy. To new designers even submitted resignation letters. On the fifth night, the finance director burst into my office. "Director Nina, there's a problem. That 800 yuan consulting fee from last year, the other company says they never received it." My hand trembled. Spilling coffee on the desk. "That's impossible. There's a transfer record. But they flatly deny it. And say they never worked with us." I stayed up all night digging through old contracts and emails. The deeper I looked, the colder I felt. All the contact numbers on the documents were for an unknown number. And the company seal on the contract looked suspicious. This deal was handled by Xiao Zhang. When I confronted him with the evidence, my assistant of 2 years immediately knelt down. "Nina, I'm sorry. Michael forced me. He said it was a small issue." I shivered. "So the 800 yuan. He gave me 200 yuan. The next day, I went to the tax bureau myself. "Chief Liu, I want to record a case of embezzlement and commercial fraud." I pushed a USB drive across the desk. "Here is the full chain of evidence." Chief Liu's face dark, and after reviewing the materials, "Ms. Nina, this case might be more complicated than we thought." I stood up. "All I ask is that the law be enforced." 3 days later, Michael and Xiao Zhang were both taken away by the police. News spread like wildfire, and the whole industry was in an uproar. Vivian rushed into my office right away. "You knew all along?" she asked. I shook my head. I was just taking a gamble knowing Michael's personality. Since he dared to report me for tax issues, he must be hiding something dirty himself. The sunlight outside shone perfectly on the newly signed multi-million contract lying on my desk. This time, I truly had won. The news of Michael's detention made the local headlines. I sat in the office with my phone bombarded by calls from media and partners. So I just put it on silent. Assistant Xiao Zhang's desk was already cleared out, with a half-drunk cup of coffee still on it. Vivian pushed the door open and slammed a stack of newspapers on my desk. "Look, well-known executive suspected of economic crimes arrested. Your ex-husband is now completely infamous." I glanced at Michael's disheveled mugshot in the paper and suddenly felt a bit dazed. How did the man I once loved become this? The tax bureau soon issued an official statement. The tax issues were due to individual employee misconduct and had nothing to do with the company. But the damage to our business reputation had already been done. 3 ongoing projects were suddenly halted, and the partners said they needed to reassess. What hurt the most was that new rumors began circulating in the circle. Nina is ruthless enough to put her ex-husband in jail. Vivian angrily slammed the table. "Are these people crazy? Michael brought this on himself." I smiled bitterly and shook my head. Human nature is just like that. They always sympathize with the apparently weaker party. That weekend, I went to visit Michael at the detention center. Through the glass, he looked 10 years older. The first thing he said when picking up the phone was, "Are you here to laugh at me?" "I came to ask you." I looked straight into his eyes. "Why did it have to come to this?" Suddenly, he smiled a twisted smile. "Because I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand how well you've been doing after leaving me." That answer gave me complete closure. After leaving the detention center, I received a call from my mother. "Nina." She hesitated. "Michael's mom came by crying, asking if you could write a letter of forgiveness." I interrupted her. "Mom, please don't get involved in this." "But he's committed a criminal offense," I said softly. "This is not family business." The studio's crisis lasted longer than I expected. New projects sharply dropped for 2 consecutive months. At the worst moment, I had to pay employees' salaries out of my own pocket. One late night, while working overtime, design director Shaolin suddenly knocked and came in. "Nina, I want to resign." Without looking up, I signed his resignation letter. "Okay." He was stunned. "You aren't even asking why?" I finally looked up. "If you think there's no future staying here, I respect your choice." The turning point came in the form of an unexpected phone call. "Nina, is this the director?" "I'm the new marketing director at Wansheng Group," a sharp female voice said. We have an urgent project and heard your studio has availability recently. I gripped the phone tightly. Why choose us? She smiled. Mr. Zhao specially instructed, he said, someone who can get things done so cleanly and efficiently deserves to collaborate. The day we signed the contract with Wan Sheng, I stayed late in the office. Outside, the city lights flickered and the traffic was bustling. Over the past year, so many things flashed through my mind: the humiliation of divorce, the hardship of starting a business, the anger when my ex tried to suppress me. And now, suddenly the phone rang. It was Vivian. Come out drinking. Celebrate your rebirth from the ashes. I looked at the new project's designed rests on my screen and smiled. Maybe another day. I have to work late tonight. This time, I was working late for myself. The Wansheng project became the turning point for our studio. 3 months later, when our packaging design hit major supermarkets, the industry finally began to reassess our value. Phone calls came non-stop, but this time, they were all for collaboration. Vivian lounged on my office sofa, crossing her legs. Do you know what they're saying about you in the circle now? The ruthless woman who sent her ex to jail and came out unscathed. I whirled the pen in my hand. Is that supposed to be a compliment? The highest form of respect. She winked. It means no one dares to mess with you anymore. On the day Michael's trial began, I went to the courthouse. He was brought in wearing a prison uniform. When his eyes caught mine in the courtroom, he was visibly startled. Throughout the trial, he never looked at me again. The prosecution accused him of embezzlement, commercial bribery, and incitement to crime, involving over 2 million yuan. When the judge asked if he pleaded guilty, he bowed his head and said, "Guilty." The final verdict, 3 years in prison. As I walked out of the court, Michael's mother suddenly rushed over to block me. "Mina, how can you be so cruel? He was at least someone you once loved." I looked calmly at the woman who once called me daughter. He was the one who tried to ruin me first. The studio moved into a bigger office. On the day of renovation, the workers hung one of my award-winning designs on the wall. My assistant asked if I wanted to put an inspirational quote next to it. I thought for a moment and said, "Just write thanks to everyone who underestimated me." Vivian rolled her eyes. So tacky. Like a nouveau riche. I smiled and shot back. Exactly the effect I want. At the year-end industry awards, I won the Emerging Design Studio of the Year. Giving my acceptance speech, I looked out at the packed crowd and said, "Thanks to everyone who ever set obstacles in my way. You made me realize a woman's worth should never be defined by marriage." The applause was thunderous. I noticed a few former clients whom had once rejected us, awkwardly clapping along. At the celebration party, an unexpected person came to find me, Director Lin. She held a glass of champagne, perfectly made up. "Mina, congrats." I clinked my glass with hers. "Heard you got promoted?" "Thanks to you." She lowered her voice. "If Michael hadn't gotten into trouble, that position would have been his." We exchanged a smile, a strange kind of understanding between us. On my way home, I got a call from Mom. "Mina, Aunt Wang introduced a match for you. A PhD graduate returned from abroad." "Mom," I interrupted. "I'm doing very well now." There was a pause on the other end of the phone. "Mom's just worried you're struggling alone." I looked out at the neon lights flashing past the car window. Being together should be like adding flowers to brocade, not like getting charcoal in snowy weather. I don't need charcoal now, I have my own fire. Before going to bed, I was scrolling through social media and saw a post from Michael's sister. Visited my brother. He said he's read a lot of books inside and finally understands many things now. The photo showed Michael's side profile through the glass, tired but calm. I gave it a like, then went back to reviewing design proposals in our work chat. At that moment, I finally realized, those people and things that once kept me awake at night no longer affect my emotions at all. 3 years later, I met Michael, newly released from prison, in the VIP lounge at the airport. He was pushing a luggage cart, dressed sharply in a suit, looking much more mature than his actual age. When our eyes met, he visibly froze for a moment, then walked toward me. "Long time no see," he said softly. "Going on a business trip?" I nodded. Milan Design Week. He gave a bitter smile. You're very successful now. The boarding announcement sounded. I stood up. What about you? I started a small consulting firm. He paused, starting over from scratch. Before boarding, he suddenly called after me. Nina. I'm sorry. Those 3 words I had waited for long years to hear them. I looked back at him. It's all in the past now. Not forgiveness, but truly letting go. The Milan exhibition was a great success. Our designs won an international award, and a French brand immediately offered to buy us out. The CEO, Amaimai, speaking broken Chinese, said, Miss Nina, your designs have the beauty of brokennesses and rebirth. I politely declined the acquisition but signed a long-term cooperation agreement. On the flight back, staring at the clouds outside the window, I suddenly remembered what Michael said on the day we divorced. Women like you can't do anything except drag others down. Now I think about it. And strangely, I'm grateful for those words. They became my greatest motivation. On the studio's 5th anniversary, Vivian brought champagne and gossip. Guess who's been asking about you? She teased, winking. Michael. Heard he brags about his ex-wife being a business genius to everyone now. I paused mid-pop of the champagne cork. Is he married? Went on a few blind dates, but none worked out. Vivian scoffed. Apparently, having fulfilledly. He keeps comparing everyone to you. The bubbles sprayed out, soaking us all. Everyone laughed, unaware of the momentary daze that crossed my face. At the year-end reunion, the class monitor mysteriously said he had someone to introduce me to. Pushing open the private room door, I saw an unexpected figure. Lucas, the senior I once had a crush on in college, now design director at a publicly listed company. He raised his glass in greeting. I've heard so much about you, Director Nina. We talked about design, the industry, and college days, but never about our romantic histories. Yet when he walked me home and quietly asked, Can I buy you coffee tomorrow? I didn't say no. In early spring, the studio took on a public welfare project commissioned by the city government. At the signing ceremony, a reporter asked me the secret to success. This time, I answered, never let anyone else define your worth. The next day, the phrase was made into a slogan and hung on the wall of our new office. Vivian said it sounded way classier than my old line. Thanks to those who underestimated me. One weekend morning, I sat on the balcony reviewing designed rafts. The sun was warm, the coffee smelled good, and my phone had a breakfast photo from Lucas. He was waiting downstairs for me. I flipped through an old photo album and had some pictures of Michael and me. I looked at them calmly for a while, then closed the album and put it at the very bottom of the storage cabinet. The doorbell rang. I grabbed my coat and headed to the door. A breeze blew into the window, lifting the corner of a new design on the table. It was a wedding invitation draft, with the date field still blank.